Hello there and welcome to another GCSE History revision tutorial. Today we're going to focus on exam technique and we're going to look at paper 2, that's your Cold War paper. We're going to focus on question 3. This is your importance question. So as you know, on paper 2 you're going to be asked 3 different types of question. We're going to focus on question 3 here. When you get the exam paper, it's going to look a little bit like this. You will actually be offered a menu of 3 importance questions and you have to choose 2 to answer. You have to answer both of your choices and each of your choices is worth 8 marks. You should spend 15 minutes on each of your choices. Now the first thing to do is to read the question carefully. And you should look for and find the event which you are being asked to explain. I call this X. As you can see, I've highlighted X on the questions shown. The next thing you should do is to find Y. This is the focus for your explanation. As you can see, I've highlighted that here in yellow. Now, the first tip I'm going to give you is this. You should try to think about this question as explain the impact of X on Y. In other words, what difference did X make to Y? So that first question becomes explain the impact of the USA's development of the atomic bomb on relations between the superpowers in the years 1945 to 1949. So in other words, what difference did America's atomic bomb make to the relationship between the superpowers? Try and think of it in that way. So let's take that first question and look at how to go about planning and writing it. Now you need to write about 2 reasons why the USA's development of the atomic bomb was important for superpower relations. Here are some ideas to get you thinking about importance. We might think about the short-term impact which it had. This could be positive or negative. We could also think about the long-term impact which this event had. Again, that could be positive or negative. We could think about whether or not the event had an impact on an individual's actions. We might ask ourselves, did event X lead to a change or a transformation in the situation? We could ask ourselves, did X lead to another key event in this focus? And lastly, we could also think about symbolic importance. Sometimes events can be important because they're a symbol of something much bigger. And I'll try and show you an example of that. Now, when I'm thinking about this particular question, I'm already starting to think about some points that I could make on the importance of the USA's atomic bomb for superpower relations. For example, I know that when America developed the atomic bomb, that created tension and distrust between Truman and Stalin at Potsdam. Another point I could make is that when America developed the atomic bomb, this encouraged Stalin to tighten his control of Eastern Europe, and that also affected superpower relations. Another point I might make is that the atomic bomb changed the balance of power because it gave America a nuclear monopoly. In other words, the USA was the only superpower with an atomic weapon. And lastly, I know that the USA's atomic bomb also triggered the start of an arms race with the USSR as Stalin's scientists rushed to catch up. Now these are already a whole list of good ideas that I could build an answer around. But I want to come back for a moment to that idea of symbolic importance, because I've got a good example of that here. When the USA detonated its atomic bomb, that also had symbolic importance for superpower relations, because it became a symbol that the world had entered a new age, an atomic age, in which the superpowers were now nuclear rivals. So I could write about that as well. So let's look at how to craft a perfect answer. Each of the paragraphs we write, and we're going to write 2 of them, each of the paragraphs we write is going to have 3 ingredients. We're going to have a big point which addresses the question. We're going to include some evidence. Now this means specific, relevant knowledge about the events in the question. And we're also going to have some explanation, but it's going to be a very focused explanation. We have to focus on explaining why it was important for relations between the superpowers. After all, that's what we were asked to focus on in the question itself. So let's look at what this might look like. So we start with a big point addressing the question. Notice I'm keeping my big point here quite broad. Now I'm going to drop in some specific relevant knowledge about the USA's development of the atomic bomb. I'm going to talk about how and where they developed it and tested it, showing some really specific knowledge about the matter. Then I'm ready to start to explain how did this impact on relations between the superpowers. And I want to try and explain how it affected relations between them at Potsdam. The first point I'm going to make here is that it made Stalin distrustful of Truman. And I'm then going to follow that up with some further explanation. This time, I'm going to talk about how the bomb gave Truman the confidence to try and push Stalin around and intimidate him at the Potsdam Conference. And this also caused tension. So my first paragraph is now complete. Remember, we have to write 2 paragraphs to get full marks though, so I need a follow-up paragraph. Let's look at how that might work. I'm going to go back to the beginning of the process and do another point, evidence and explanation. So here's my second point. I'm going to write about how the development of the atomic bomb created more tension over Eastern Europe. Again, I'm keeping my big point quite broad. Once again, I need to show some specific knowledge of the bomb itself. Here I'm going to talk about how the USA used the bombs on 2 Japanese cities. Next, I need to start to explain how did that affect superpower relations. So I'm going to focus on how it made Stalin more determined to tighten his control on Eastern Europe. And I'm going to develop that explanation slightly further, stringing together a series of explaining phrases. So I'll write about how it made Stalin go ahead and bring the satellite states under tighter control. And then I'm going to link that to tensions between the superpowers. I'll write about how Truman saw this as Stalin expanding his control over Eastern Europe. And this brings my explanation to a close. Now, to make sure that you've got the method right, let's have a look at one more example. Here we've got a different question. Explain the importance of the long telegram for the development of the Cold War. So once again, we need to think about what difference did the long telegram make to the Cold War? What impact did the telegram have on the Cold War? If we're really stuck for ideas, remember, here are some thoughts to get you started. I've already started to think about this one, and I've already come up with a few points that I might use in my answer. For example, I know that the long telegram increased Truman's distrust of Stalin in the USSR. I also know that it encouraged Truman to issue the Truman Doctrine and to begin containment. The telegram also had an impact on Stalin as well. It convinced him that the USA could no longer be seen as an ally. And it also led to Stalin hitting back with the Novikov telegram. Now, I don't have to develop all of these ideas in my answer, but a couple of them will make 2 nice paragraphs. So let's look at how that might work. Once again, we're going to use that same structure: point, evidence and explanation, and we'll write 2 paragraphs. We'll begin with a big point. Once again, I'm keeping it quite broad. I know the long telegram led to containment. Now I need to show some specific relevant knowledge about the long telegram. So I'm going to write a little bit about who made the telegram and what the message in the telegram was. And then I'm ready to start explaining how it impacted on the Cold War. So I'm going to talk about how it affected Truman and his actions. I'm going to write a developed explanation using explaining connectives in a chain. And in fact, I'm going to take that through 3 steps, explaining how Truman issued the Truman Doctrine, began containment, and how this idea went on to become one of the main aims of the USA during the Cold War. So now I've got a lovely developed explanation. But I haven't got top marks yet because I need 2 of these paragraphs. So let's look at how that second paragraph might go. We'll start with another big point. Again, we'll keep it quite broad. The long telegram provoked the USSR. Once again, we'll need some specific relevant knowledge about the long telegram. So I'm going to include another of the messages which George Kennan wrote in his telegram. And now I'm ready for my explanation. I'm going to focus really closely here on why the long telegram was important for the development of the Cold War. So I'm going to write about how it was received by Stalin and how he felt insulted by it. I'm going to develop that by talking about how it made cooperation between the Soviets and the Americans harder. And I'll build on that a little further, explaining how the Soviets hit back with the Novikov telegram, which further contributed to the breakdown of the wartime alliance. And so my paragraph now is complete. If you would like to take this further, here are 3 importance questions which you could have a go at practicing on. Don't forget, if you found this video helpful, please do like it. It helps others to find the video. And if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, please do. There are lots more useful GCSE videos there to help you out.